Moving on now to how an economist sees the plan. We speak with Jonathan Williams, Chief Economist and Executive Vice President of Policy at the American Legislative Exchange Council. He talks about the administration's new plan for student loan forgiveness and his 2024 report on state economies, rich states, poor states. Jonathan Williams, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks so much for having me back.
Sure. So first, President Biden on Monday announced even more student loan cancellation. Officials said that about 10 million people will be getting some relief of about $5,000 each. So tell us what that could mean for our economy, both in the short term and in the long term going forward.
Well, it's a great question. It's yet another way that the Biden administration has gone outside of the Constitution. I mean, it'd be great if a president could raise a magic wand, I suppose, and say, we're just going to have people's debt forgiven. But, of course, that's not our constitutional system. That's a real problem with the Constitution, not giving the president that sort of unilateral ability to basically appropriate money in a way. That is reserved for the legislative branch in Congress. So, I mean, it's a major violation of our separation of powers, first of all. And then secondly, we have to look at the longer term impact. We're about to hit this threshold of $35 trillion of national debt. It's coming very quickly, and adding more debt to that fire that has fueled inflation, that's fueled all the price increases that we've suffered throughout the course of Bidenomics is going to do nothing but make that inflation problem worse. And then, of course, moreover, I think we need to be looking at the longer term solution, which is what is driving the cost of higher education in college to the first place, instead of treating the symptom, like we are with this Biden administration proposal, unconstitutional may it be. We're not treating the underlying problem, which is how do we keep the cost of education from skyrocketing?
So the first thing I noticed about your ranking is that actually the top 15 with top economic outlook are actually Republican or leaning Republican, while the bottom 16 are Democratic. So that has a lot to do, of course, with our national economy. But tell us more about what's about the state's policies that, lead to these rankings.
Well, this is our 17th edition of our Rich States, Poor States report, where we do rank the states based on their economic competitiveness and, where it is that people are moving. That's one of the key takeaways is Americans continually vote with their feet towards states that offer more economic freedom. And it turns out the states in the top 15 that you were talking about, governed conservatively for many cases years now, are cutting taxes and actually paying down debt. Juxtapose that versus this exploding federal debt that we just talked about. And all of a sudden you have a scenario where states are now leading the way. We know we have gridlock, whether whoever's Speaker of the House, whoever is the Senate lead, whoever's in the White House is likely to be gridlock in Washington continuing. But the great news, the positive, I think, uplifting story that many Americans don't hear is the states, these 50 laboratories of democracy, are leading the way every year by empowering people and businesses to make these choices for themselves and cutting taxes and cutting regulations.
Tell us about what specific variables, what methods you use in measuring each state's economic outlook.
We focus on 15 that are directly in the control of state legislators in their state capitals. Things like tax rates, tax burdens, regulations, labor policies, things that matter for individuals and businesses, things that legislators control. But we know that these are among the most important factors. My co-author, Arthur Laffer, has studied this for over 50 years, President Reagan's economic advisor, and he knows that these factors are some of the most important, what drives growth from state to state. Because there's a big difference in the policy framework of the top tier of states versus the bottom tier. And our index in Rich States, Poor States, I think captures a great deal of that.
So tell us about how these individual states, how are they impacting the national economy, either positively or negatively?
We need more states to be like Florida and Texas. And we need America to be more like Florida and Texas because they've got it right when it comes to this mix of economic opportunity, lower taxes, and allowing government to stay out of the way of individuals and businesses. And you change that to look at the other side of the equation where you have New York and California, really the two other big states governed by far left progressives and Gavin Newsom and in New York. And you have the situation where those four states, I think, drive so much of the discussion, and rightly so, but we need America to be more like those freedom-loving states like Texas and Florida and less like New York and California.
Jonathan Williams, thank you so much for joining us as always.
Well, thank you for the invitation. Good to see you.